Hello and welcome to Deep Dives with New Perspectives. I'm Michael Bartlett.
And I'm Merrylin LeBlanc.
If you like what we're offering here, please hit like, please share with your friends. And we'd like to somehow get to beyond, 10, 15, 20 views. Please, I hope we're sharing something of value here. I feel like I'm doing a telethon promotion right now. Like we used to do at KSFR all the time, right? Please send in the money.
Fundraisers, they're so much fun.
But actually, just would just be nice. So, or, please let us know what you'd like us to be talking about. So it makes it more fascinating or more interesting to you because, we're enjoying doing this for ourselves, but we hope it has value for other people as well. So thanks for tuning in. What's up in the sky this week, Merrylin?
Well, there's some interesting things that are happening. And today, one of them and it happens this afternoon at our time. And even if you're to the east, even later in the afternoon, the exact happening, but the energy is already happening. Mars squaring Neptune, an unlikely pair. The fiery planet of Mars is like that's always aware of the direction it's going to take. Like, I'm going to dig a ditch today and it's going to be right over there and it's going to be has to go so deep and then so high, and this is Mars, whereas it's squaring Neptune, which is like, okay,
or maybe you start digging and you hit water.
The wall is made of molecules and things that we can't even see, and I see how this creature named Mars is trying to bring it to some kind of form. But you know what? It's been many other forms before, and it could be many more forms after.
And if you start digging, you might hit water.
Oh yeah, imagine that. Imagine the planet Earth becoming the water planet. They even made a movie. One of the things that
Water World.
If I'm being Neptune, yes, Water World. And when you hit some of the things you read about climate change is the rising oceans.
Yeah.
There might be less land mass. And if we humans, I'll be a human now. If we humans
stop being an Aquarian for a moment and be human.
We continue to ignore what we're doing to this earth and continually using fossil fuels and all kinds of aerosols and stuff that disrupt the balance on the planet Earth. Just totally, like, it seems like many of the big corporations want us to totally ignore the issues that are accelerating the climate change. As one person said to me not too long ago, the climate is always changing. Yes, to some extent, yes, but not as drastically and as quickly as what we're seeing. And we're seeing the death of some things much more rapidly than, kind of natural movement, because everything is always in flux and change.
Well, these two, when you think about them, and it's in a third quarter relationship with Mars being in Sagittarius and Neptune being in Pisces. So, there's this aspect of, what we didn't know, we didn't know. And I don't know, for whatever reason, when I think of these two planets together, I think of kind of like a spiritual warrior, and I think of, what happened a year ago at the Capitol, and, and how many of those individuals really considered themselves to be spiritual warriors. And so it's like, is this, are, people, the words have even, I've been surprised by how soft the words have even been. It's like, our Capitol was attacked last year. And there are so many ways in which it's being downplayed and made okay. Our lawmakers were threatened, their lives were threatened. And it's like this thing of like, oh, it's okay, and it's like, no, this is setting up a stage to see, how America's going to handle other insurrections that come up.
Well, the interesting thing about a couple of things about what you've just been saying too, is that the degree that this particular square is happening at the 21st degree of Sagittarius and the 21st, or no, wait, yeah, not a, yeah, Sagittarius and the 21st degree of Pisces. Was also, the Pisces one was also the degree that the two planets began this cycle. It's just a 2-year cycle. They began it just last June. Well, no, they began it a year ago, last June, at that same degree, because Neptune moves very slowly, you know, in retrograde action. So there's this back and forth thing. But this particular degree of Pisces, the 21st degree, is the beginning of the 3rd decan of Pisces, which is a scorpionic decan. So it's sort of like Pluto gets into the picture here. And and you could say that Jupiter gets into the picture as well because of Sagittarius, where Mars is right now. So this is a whole combination of collective energy, you know, in terms of where are we heading, you know, what are our beliefs, what do we stand for, what do we take action, what do we want to promote. All of that is just like wrapped up in this, and how, you know, this degree talks about emotional transformations. I mean, when the things that you brought up that have happened in this country, if people aren't, even people that are, you know, pro-Trump and pro the not liking the way that Congress is going, there's a strong emotional energy here, an energy that can transform us both positively and negatively. It can be, here's the scorpionic side of it, because this is Mars and Scorpio kind of energy speaking, even though Mars right now is in Sagittarius.
Mars is involved, yeah.
It could be the death of us, not just of us as individual human beings, but the death of this country. And we're not the only ones saying that. There are many pundits who are saying that we, you know, we are on the verge of existential
crisis.
threats. Yeah, crises.
Yes. And then, you know, to be honest, that I feel that that's also mirrored in the Venus retrograde going over Pluto, hitting the sun. I mean, I think there's so many people. And then while this is going on, you know, the new Omicron is ramped up and made, you know, and is the amount of cases, it makes it seem like an inevitability that we should all eventually have it anyway. And it's just this thing of like, you know, I think people are, it's kind of like this amazingly perfect storm. Yeah. And then Mercury goes retrograde now. So how are we even going to talk about it? I mean, it's like these things where we really kind of need to retreat into ourselves, right? And make some, and be like more thoughtful and review things. I think that 3rd quarter square requires a level of thoughtfulness, right? Because it's like, you know, it's like finally really coming to terms with something you haven't been paying attention to. And it's like, wow, is this really what we're here for? Is this really the country we want to live in? Or these are the people we want to be working with?
Yeah, well, I lost the word I was going to say. If I focus on you, I lose my train of thought.
I know.
That's okay. It's like,
I can pause it if you want.
Well, no. It's just basically, the scorpionic existential stuff, and the fact that Neptune is in a decan that brings up Scorpio and Plutonian energy. And so we are facing extinction. Now, to put that in spiritual terms, which is also part of Neptune, we are facing a major transformation as far as humanity goes. And one way to positively look at the pandemic is that it is a way of preparing us for the kind of transformational leap that humanity needs to take to continue to exist on this planet. And, you know, breaking those things down, I mean, we could break them down into, especially with with Aquarius being emphasized, well, Aquarius has Saturn in it right now, and of course the Uranus is in Taurus, so there's some earthly stuff. So you could think about the kinds of inventions that have been coming up, and I mean, we've already had them that prepared us for this. I mean, what we're using right now in terms of devices to do this kind of communication is one way of saying, yes, you humans can evolve on this planet and carry on, but in a slightly different way. And that is a gift. So, instead of resisting the changes of, oh, yeah, you need to, even though this is not the best way for children to be socialized and to enjoy learning at an early age, you need to incorporate the technology to do that. I keep having this vision since this is going on. We're going into the soon to go into the third year of this of some kind of spacesuit. And as one person said to me, all we basically need is the space helmet with oxygen tank.
And someone did make one of those early on, and it was like this, I don't know, it was some expensive thing, but people were like, well, who's going to, you have to be kind of a bit of a yuppie to have it. And then also, who wants to walk around wearing a little space helmet? And also, I think too, like the sun's rays and everything hitting you, and I don't know.
Well, that's the vision of what we presently have of them.
Right, that's true.
There are different ways that this could be constructed. It doesn't have to be this big glass bubble around us.
Right, like there's so many sci-fi things, actually, that's really what we need to start looking at, some of the sci-fi things, those little like triangular things that just fit over your face and mouth, and it just kind of like hooks in somewhere somehow and just makes it, and it's just normal breathing, and that's how you're used to doing it. And then eventually we'll probably need something to cover our eyes, because there's gonna be things in the air that aren't gonna be good for our eye. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, well,
and we have the Pluto returns this year, so for the US. So it's gonna be very
we'll be talking about that in February a lot, since what is it, February 20th is the first hit, I believe.
Soon already. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's already approaching, and actually the applying is the most intense.
We're feeling it. We're seeing it. We're seeing it at every level of our government. All the, people, the mistruths, the truths, the different stories, Well,
when we have oligarchies come under Pluto, and we have an oligarchy running this country, big corporations. Yeah. I mean, that's already here. And that has been, it's interesting because that has been a topic even with our founding fathers. And
great concern for them.
Yeah, a great concern. And also, even though to some extent some of them were really oligarchs. So, yeah, and so it's time to wake up. And what kind of world do you want to live in? What kind of world do you want to have to be governed by? And
I mean, it'll be interesting. Are we moving into a period of like the Dark Ages in a sense, like what happened in Europe in the Middle Ages, where it was just like there was just really kind of a dearth of human advancement? Or is the advancement going to just take off in such astronomical ways? I mean, I guess that's going to all depend on survival, like you say, and with Pluto being the key here. I mean, that's Pluto and Scorpio themes coming throughout this whole thing, and it's really, finding ways to, even though Scorpio is a fixed sign, we have to find ways to adjust to the new norm. Over the holidays, I had some friends over. I think it was New Year's. We had some friends over, and I just and looking at kind of the bounty of the food, and having gone to the grocery store and seeing some of the empty spots in the aisle, I think we're going to look back on this previous period of time and realize what an amazing bounty we have, because I don't think that we're going to have that going forward for a while.
No, it's like that. Well, the whole industry is shifting. That's interesting that you bring that up, though, because with climate change, there is a real emphasis on, well, they don't call it this, but victory gardens. The small garden, the small farm, and and cooperative farming.
Yeah.
And it's probably coming down to that in terms,
Which the
it's
cities, a
probably
lot of the big,
healthier for the planet and healthier for us as well.
right. And a lot of the big cities have been doing it for a few years now with great benefits, not only to feeding its citizenry, but also lowering the temperatures in their cities because it's covering, it's giving greenery on these building tops.
Well, yeah,
In
but
Chicago and New York.
in this, we're almost finished with the book. We've been reading, a group of us, it's a book club reading, All We Can Do. It's edited by women and the contributions are by women. All We Can Save, edited by Anna Elizabeth Johnson and Catherine Wilkinson. It's quite interesting in terms of all the kinds of information. And it basically, one of the things, the last meeting we had, which was last night, which made me think, and this goes to the climate change and the disasters we're talking about. And I was thinking, in reading this section, I was thinking of El Dorado, where I had lived about 25 years ago, and how, some of the people I was living in a house that had a well itself. Some don't have their own well, but some of the wells out there are drying up right now. That's a friend of mine who lives in El Dorado was just telling me that. And I was reading this section, I was going like, oh, if we start treating the soil right, they can regenerate the soil, and then having regenerative soil actually creates more dew in the air, water in the air that can be collected. There's a story about this place in Texas where they had a big water tank that was collected, and they didn't realize it was full, but it became full because so much dew was being created by this healthy soil that they had, tended to and brought about.
It's funny when you say that, because I think, they talk about terraforming. It's like, why don't we why can't we just terraform in our deserts then? And they have these wind collector turbines that also will do things that will collect and bring water in. And there's these very interesting things. But then I wonder too, does that then take water away from other places? Because the truth is water is we're a terrarium. All of our chemicals are finite.
Well, what's happening to the water now?
Well, I mean, look what's happening on the East Coast. Look what's happening, where the floodings are occurring. It's like the water moves.
Recycle, but what's happened is we've toxidified it.
There's that too, right? Acid rain.
Yes, and we've polluted it. I mean, everything is connected.
Right.
That was actually at the end of this chapter. Everything is.
Well, and that unfortunately is what business has gotten humans away from in our growth. I mean, humans before the industrial age understood, anyone who farmed, anyone who had animals, I mean, you understood there were these cycles. I mean, that's why astrology did well back in the day. That's why, because there are cycles, how things are being done. People are being removed from those cycles, systematically. And then we're in this society now where people aren't aware of these things. And so, as things break down again, I think those of us who are aware of these things and have been, keeping away on it, hopefully we'll be able to help other people do that. Like you said, making, doing gardens, doing, supporting local farmers markets, not using Roundup ever.
This is, I think of Venus in Capricorn. Venus Venus is said to rule Taurus, which is definitely Mother Nature in all her glory. And she is still retrograde in Capricorn for a little while longer. And she's been going through, I think she's there now, the area that is the decan that is of Capricorn that is related to Taurus. So it's sort of like she's saying, she's reminding us of the beauty that we can have from nature and how nature can sustain us and nurture us and bring pleasure to us, etc. But these things have to, I mean, amazingly, there are many people around the globe who are doing wonderful things, but more of us need to be doing these things.
I'm just giggling because I'm remembering those old Imperial margarine commercials as an example of, like, you know, how businesses take us away from nature, you know, like where there's Mother Nature and says, oh, this is butter. It's like, no, it's not. Oh, no, Parquet, I think. No, I don't remember which one it was, but it was one of those things where Mother Nature appeared. Do you remember that one? You can't fool Mother Nature.
Remember Oleo and
No, but the theme was like, you can't fool Mother Nature. And it was supposed to, you know, it was like a margarine product. And it was like, you know, trying to get people to believe that this margarine product is better for you than butter. I mean, those sorts of alienating business practices that are then supported and become beliefs, you know, and now look at what our food supply chain is, you know, all of it, it's so overly processed. And there's so many things in our food that aren't nutritious for us, or don't even have any nutritional value for that matter, because they're so overly processed.
Well, it's one of the fairly good things, depending on how you look at it, about some of the popular diets, like the paleo diet and the keto diet, because they're really focused on certain foods that are going to help you burn fat, but in fact, those foods are, you know, like nuts, you know, any vegetables most vegetables for that matter, fruits, not so much, and meats. I mean, I know that the amount of meat that we consume is part of the problem here on the planet Earth. That's a dilemma for me. I mean, and you're just talking about Mars. I mean, I think of Mars as a meat eater. Taurus, you know, you can eat the flowers and the greens and all of that sort
But
of
Mars
thing.
wants to kill its meat and eat it right there.
Our blood, which is Mars, also, you know, that red stuff that runs through our veins and keeps us vital. It's the Mars energy, and some of us, as far as our blood types, I'm a real believer in the blood type diet.
Too.
Really do need meat, but not
O positive.
I'm B positive.
Oh. What is B? O positive? I know really does need the red meat.
Do dairy and all the stuff. And actually, it's interesting because lamb is my favorite meat, actually, and that's very much a B positive meat.
Oh, interesting. Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, but yeah. So it's kind of it's how we do these things and how much we do these things, and have we and like you said earlier, how you know, some people are relearning the wisdom of how to deal with the land, but of course, you know, when the beef industry really overdid it big time.
Well, that's the hard part again. I mean, what we're talking about, and here's that space where we're talking, you know, Capricorn, you know, corporations, you know, that have built up these things that are just unsustainable and unhealthy. You know, these big, you know, multi-mile warehouses that are holding chickens that, you know, are in little cages that can't move, or the same thing with pigs or whatever. It's like, you know, and so but it's also, you know, trying to meet the demand of people who want to only pay a small amount of money for their food. And so, you know, when you have a limited amount of income, you know, trying to go for organic is not really an easy thing. It's more expensive. You know, we haven't found cost-effective ways to do it yet. And those are the things that need to change. I have chickens. I'm so happy to have chickens and know that I have like a good, healthy, organic protein, because I feed them organic grains and they get all the treats.
They're creating for you. Oh,
Sorry?
whoa. Your own natural mulch.
And that's the other thing. I mean, talk about an amazing fertilizer. Who needs chemicals? I mean, animal manure is phenomenal for feeding the earth. I mean, when I didn't have chickens for a little while, I turned it into a garden, and I swear it looked like, you know, the island of Dr. Moreau or something. I mean, I had 6-foot tall tomato plants because the ground was just so rich with all the nitrogen from the chicken manure.
Here's the Mars part about it. There's the Mars Scorpio, and then there's the Mars Aries. It gives you all this Aryan energy to do that kind of, because that's
Right. Yeah. So if anyone wants some fertilizer here in Santa Fe, give me a buzz. I'd be happy to, I'm building a brew, as it were. But yeah, I mean, building it up, putting, for those of us here in the desert, if you have a garden, putting mulch down, doing things that keep the moisture in the ground, that create moisture, that create that support. I mean, I think we're going to be relearning and remembering, remembering is like reattaching these old things that have been separated, because we've been really, I think, horrifically separated from our true selves over the last, 150 years, and in other ways, for the history of humanity. So it's like, coming forth with these levels of consciousness and awareness, and having to deal with an existential threat to everything, should hopefully motivate us to become better. But,
What a better time to rethink all of this with Mercury going retrograde. But on Friday, Mercury goes retrograde. Once again in Aquarius, this year, Mercury will go back into the previous sign, their sign, Capricorn. Last year, Mercury went retrograde in Aquarius around this time, but a little later actually. But yeah, so we're going to have Mercury retrograde in Aquarius, thinking of new ways of dealing with our Earth, and then it back into
each other.
What do we need to do to achieve that?
Right. How do we hold the corporations responsible? I mean, I think it reminds me a little bit of back in I think it was like in the 80s or so, when all of a sudden there was this awareness that these companies had been dumping all their toxic waste into the local rivers and basically poisoning everyone downstream.
That scenario happens up at the lab here in Los Alamos here.
Yeah.
Santa Fe area.
So I mean, I think we do see that that corporations can make changes, but there has to be people who hold their feet to the fire, who make them accountable. And I think if our government is with a fascist government, where it's basically run by corporations, it makes it very challenging to try and get things taken care of for people.
This goes to the Venus retrograde. The greed. When is enough in terms of cutting corners, and say we need a whole new priority list for anybody who's doing any kind of business, as well as the people who interact with, that's all of us who interact with those businesses, because the greed starts with individuals, but we see it in these corporate entities that have pretty much taken over everything, including our politicians. And that it's so much of a Capricorn, with Pluto going through Capricorn. These are things that we shouldn't be surprised at. Our founding fathers, I was taught in some of my history classes that, they didn't want to pay taxes to England. And these companies were
taxation without representation.
Yes, but what they did was they turned around, with some of them with their plantations and other businesses, and pretty much did the same thing, which reminds me of I think he's from Brazilian, Paulo Freire. I don't know if he's still alive, a writer or an educator, who wrote The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He talks about how if people don't learn new ways, they turn around and do this, even though they, like, for example, we think this system is really bad and needs to go. But, so somebody starts their own grocery store, and sooner or later they start doing the same thing because they haven't learned how to do something differently.
And and that's the thing. I mean, that gets into an even wider bit. Here that's, I think that's a good thing with Mercury going into Aquarius. But educating people more fully, giving an education that deals with actual issues in life, how to balance a checkbook, how to pay your bills, how to clean your house, how to get ready to go to work, how, what are the proper ways of maintaining a good community. I mean, I think in a way that's probably US civics and economics, but
Most states don't teach civics anymore.
right. And those were the things where people would at least learn, hey, we have kind of a civic responsibility to one another. It's become so separatized through, like you said, people's greed. And then the bottom line is how do we make it, back the idea was like a chicken in every pot, right? Making it so that everyone had enough, so that there wasn't necessarily this need of being greedy.
I have a teacher friend who taught home ec, who shared how she wanted to. This was one of my Moonwise shows. She shared it. She growing up, she was very upset that her brothers never cleaned up after themselves, and I could totally relate to that. I used to yell at my mother when she would go. She'd say to me, whose dirty socks are those on the living room floor? And I'm go, why are you telling me? They're not mine. They're obviously boys' socks.
Wow. Yeah, we didn't have that sex separation in our household growing up.
Oh, I did. Oh God. Anyway,
Yeah.
This teacher, proposed this home ec class for boys, specifically to teach them the things that she wished her brothers had learned.
Yeah, like how to do the laundry, how to stack a dishwasher, how to make a few basic meals.
There's a funny side to that story, even though it doesn't relate to the point here, is that the principal said okay, and then he advertised the class as saying there would be it would be taught by, I don't remember the exact words, but this beautiful, sexy woman, she had like 200 students who signed up.
That's great. Oh, I love it. And that's the thing, it's marketing.
It's also
Make
Mars.
it sexy. Make it sexy and they will come.
Mars to explore something new. And what's the value? What's the
Right, that's the Venus. I mean, I think this is such a great time. And this whole year is really going to be. I just think everything is up for people. It's up for review. What are our relationships with our family, our friends, our loved ones, our animals, our home, our possessions, the way we do things, the way we think we should be doing things, and finding a new way. I mean, the truth is, we're all in this together. We're all, I mean, no one's going to be unaffected by what these planetary changes are going on. I just think each of these ramping up, these astrological things that are ramping up for us are just further means, if we take the indication and the invitation to step up to the plate and address things, we might have a different experience going forward.
That's true. Well, thought that brings to my mind, and this goes back to Neptune, which is a big player this week, today even with Mars squaring Neptune, is that Neptune represents the thin veils between us on the planet and those that used to be on the planet. And as one friend shared with me in her communications to that other side, that they can help us. And, but they need to be asked. They can see the problems or understand or experience. I don't know what the sensation is, if there is a sensation at that level. But we have to ask, and asking is a prayer.
Well, that brings back to me what I realized with Mars and Neptune in that square. The saving grace is Jupiter. So it's our belief, it's our faith.
Yeah, but Jupiter, that's so nice you say saving grace. But the minute I think you mentioned Jupiter, and it's probably because of the stuff I've been watching lately, Jupiter could also have this horrible spin side to satisfy personal longings.
Jupiter's a manipulator. Let's admit it. Jupiter can take any data and make it any better. I'm saying in relation to the Saturn and the Neptune, I mean the Mars and the Neptune with Sagittarius and Pisces, the connecting factor is the Jupiter. And so, I think it's going to be a testing of our faith too, especially with Mars and Neptune as those two, so it's really, what do we believe in? What is our faith? And that Venus retrograde, I think, reiterates all these things. I think are reiterating aspects of like, hey, it's time for a life review.
That's true, because I have to say, like with Jupiter, I think, I think about journalists, which is kind of especially on the worldwide scene of news, how their material is a metaphor for the dying earth. It's scarce. It's sometimes hardly informative versus hardly nutritious. You have to do your own searching for
which is really the truth. And I mean, and that's what I think retrograde planets are really good back is it brings us back to ourselves. It's like everything we've somehow been raised to believe that everything's going to be spoon fed and given to us. But anyone who's walked the path, anyone who's lived on the planet long enough knows that the only way things really happen is when you do them.
Virgo Mars.
Yeah, and I mean, I have to say, like, I mean, I might have a progressed retrograde Mars for most of my life, but I don't have any trouble getting things done. And I mean, the hardest part I think we do is like, especially here in Santa Fe, New Mexico, we're in the land of mañana, so it's always like this, oh, well, wait. So it's like, wait, but also find the right time and actually do it. Don't put it off so long. I mean, all these things have been put off so long that, that's, these are the consequences of us as a collective not addressing these issues.
Well, Michael,
how can people find you, Merrylin?
moonwiseastrology.com. That's moonwiseastrology.com. You can find my email there. You can find my phone number there. You can find all kinds of consultations I like to do. Some people want the old-fashioned basic kind of consultation. I can do that as well. But there's so much more.
There really is. And people can find me at coremichael.com. I got information on readings, talks I give, my books, and free articles and ideas and links to other important pages. But thank you all this week. Try and find whatever grace you can, compassion, love, support for yourself and others, and probably, as much as you can, be a little more inward. Probably not the real big time to be out there and be socializing, and especially because of the Omicron and what's going on with that, but also just what's up planetarily. This is really inward reflection time. So I really encourage that for everyone.
I think that those little buggers are reminding us that Venus is retrograde.
Hey, I'll tell you, well, Venus is a bug giver. I mean, Venus, venereal disease, this is like she and she's she is how we link and connect with one another. So, yeah, there's no surprise that like the cases have just gone up like crazy in that time. I'm sorry.
She's saying it's time to be alone.
Yeah, I'm single for the first time in 20 years. I'm really, and I also have a natal Venus Capricorn. So this one is really helping me see things in a very different light. How do we, what are the compromises we do in relationship with other? How do we adjust ourselves in ways that maybe aren't the best? I think we do that all along, but then we have to have a certain level of compromise in order to relate with other people. So it's one of those things. It's just an ongoing process for us humans, isn't it?
Yes. Many options.
Many options. All right. Have a great week, Merrylin. Take care.
Now.
Thank you. Bye.